I'm not a filmmaker in any sense, so I don't really get that involved with creative projects. I'm occasionally honor bound, noblesse oblige, if a former student of mine whose work I've been following and who I genuinely believe is talented and a decent human being, if asked to read his or her screenplay or look at his or her rough cut, hard to say no. But I make it a point to say no in general to reading people's screenplays or watching their rough cuts if they're not former students of mine. In terms of accepting invitations to speak, it's pretty simple. The older I get, the more I say no if it's not local. In other words, there was a time, whenever I have a book that's coming out, and this was particularly palpable 3 years ago, I had 2 books coming out in 1 year. Cinematic Overtures, How to Read Opening Scenes. That was Columbia University Press and was considered a really accessible book. And I was shocked myself when it went into 4th printing before I even knew that half a year had gone by. But part of that was because I literally went wherever I was invited, or I would, knowing that I was going to some place, I would create a book signing event and make sure that I was there to promote that book. The second was about an unknown Polish filmmaker named Wojciech Haas, who does have a sort of cult following in the United States for his movie, The Saragossa Manuscript, which was the favorite film of Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead. He also made The Hourglass Sanatorium. And that one it's the only book I've ever written that was commissioned, where the Polish Cultural Institute, the Adam Mickiewicz Institute, they came to me and asked me to write that book because they really appreciated the book I had written about Kieślowski, possibly my favorite filmmaker, and I was his translator as well. And I initially said no, because I'd never met Wojciech Haas, who died some 20 years ago. Unlike the quote auteur studies that I had already written, Francois Truffaut, I knew, Kieślowski, I knew, Philip Kaufman, I still know and admire deeply. I said, how can I write about Haas's work if I've never met him? But they convinced me, they helped, they subsidized my trip to Poland, where I was able to interview Haas's former students from the Lodz Film School, his colleagues from the Lodz Film School. I learned about him through them, and then watched his films with a better knowledge of what he was like as a human being. When those 2 books came out, I never stopped traveling in between classes. I dragged my husband that year. My goodness, we went to the Rome Film Festival, the Mill Valley Film Festival, San Francisco, Los Angeles. I mean, we were, and then we went to that wonderful, in Lodz, I just blanked on the name of the festival, Transcontinental or something. Jan Kaczmarek created it. Fantastic place. Then once we were back, I kind of was not wanting to travel all that much. And once the pandemic hit, the idea of getting on an airplane, if it's not an absolute emergency, Right. So these days I'm being cautious.